Hello, everyone. Welcome to Accessibility Talks, the monthly virtual meetup where we chat about digital accessibility, inclusivity, and usability. Each month, we invite a speaker to present a topic, and afterward, we invite the community to ask questions and participate in the discussion. I want to take a moment to remind folks that our group seeks to provide a friendly and safe environment. We require all participants to adhere to the Accessibility Talks Code of Conduct. This applies to all community interactions and events. This also applies to verbal questions as well as chat in text channels. This code of conduct can be found on our websites. That's A11yTalks, A11yTalks.com. All participants should be able to engage in productive dialogue and should share and learn with each other in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Moving on, if you have a question for our speaker, please post it on Twitter with the hashtag A11yTalks, that's A11yTalks, or in the chat window if you are participating in our live stream. I'm your host today, Andrew Olson. I'm a lead front-end developer at Bounteous. I enjoy front-end development and the challenge of making the web accessible for everyone on any device. I'm thrilled to have recently joined the A11yTalks team. Our featured speaker today is Helen Burge. She is a senior accessibility and usability consultant at AbilityNet. She performs accessibility assessments for desktop, responsive, and mobile native devices, as well as provides trainings and remediation recommendations to conform to WCAG guidelines. She runs several projects, mentors others on her team, and collaborates on documentation and guidelines. Today, Helen will guide us through PDF pitfalls and show us how to meet PDF universal accessibility, also known as PDFUA. But before we get started, I wanted to ask Helen about a fun fact she shared with us at A11yTalks. Just before the lockdown in March 2020, you got a puppy. And then you found out you were going to have a baby. And I hear that the puppy and the baby both share a special day. Is that right, Helen?
Yes, they have the same birthday, just a year apart. So the puppy was born on the 30th of December 2019, and my son was born on the 30th of December 2020. And yes, a lockdown baby. And they also share something else.
Okay, what else do they share besides a birthday, which is pretty amazing in of itself?
A name. My dog luckily is called Thomas because I let my eldest give a middle name to my youngest, and he gave him the dog's name as his middle name. So his middle name is Thomas.
That is wonderful. That is quite a risk, but I think it's good.
Yes, at one point it was going to be Percy or Roger, which is why he wasn't allowed to name him the first name.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing. And I'm really excited to hear about PDFs. So with that, why don't you go ahead and begin? I'll be collecting questions. Please post them in the live stream and we'll get started. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'll share my screen. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this talk. I, as you can see, work for AbilityNet, and we're going to go through the PDF pitfalls and how to meet PDFUA. Now, I want to say hello to everyone and welcome. And I've tried to list out any acronyms that I use because I appreciate not everyone will know, for instance, that PDF stands for Portable Document Format. This session is going to cover the basics for how to make a PDF accessible, how to identify the issues, and how to use tools and fix the issues found. You do need to have a paid version of Adobe Acrobat to do this yourself, Pro or DC. I'll be using Adobe Acrobat DC today. And I'm your guide, Helen Burge, and there's my LinkedIn profile. I literally only just put up the new qualification of CPWA there. And I'd like to say, as this is quite a short session, I am not going to great detail with the PDF accessibility ins and outs, but I'm going to go through the basics. And I've learned a lot of this myself through just finding out the hard way, what works, what doesn't work. And I'm trying to use today as a way to help you get those learning points under the belt so that you don't have the pain I had of learning it from scratch without any guidance, because at that time I didn't know the awesome accessibility people that I know now that would have helped me out on the journey. So for the agenda, we're going to go through the PDF accessibility overview, which is what works, what doesn't work, and what makes a PDF accessible. Then we're going to look at the Adobe Accessibility Checker, and I'm going to do a demo of making a PDF accessible using the Accessibility Checker and some manual checks. Then we're going to do the same, but with Pack 3, which is a tool for making a PDF PDFUA compliant. And then we're going to compare the results of the two PDFs, so you can see how the one made accessible with Adobe is how it results in Pack 3 and vice versa. And then we'll go through the summary and questions. So the main challenge of making PDFs accessible is always the source document. And when I say the source document, that's the document that creates the PDF. So scanned documents, when you have a flat image where someone scanned it in, made it into a PDF and think that's okay to be accessible without trying to do the object character recognition so that someone who might use, say, a screen reader or a keyboard to navigate around can interact with the PDF. That is always very difficult to remediate, and I always recommend going away from scanning documents in and having a programmatic source, like say Word instead. You do need to add additional accessibility tags to add structure to a PDF. So things like making sure the headings are in the correct order, making sure that you have annotations for images known as figures in the PDF. They don't always have great usability on mobile, but that is improving. A lot of people tend to maybe overlook the mobile side of it, but I know that I've used PDFs on mobile and it varies as to how good they are. You often have complex layouts. I find sometimes if someone's putting a lot of imagery into a PDF, that can be very difficult to make accessible, but that's the same with any imagery. I often say, if in doubt, have a table to explain what you see in the picture, because it's not always people that can't see it that are having difficulty with the image sometimes. It can also be people that don't quite get what you mean by the image. And the worst bit of making a PDF accessible is you need either additional skills to use some of the free software out there, or you need to have some paid for tools like the Adobe tools, which does mean you need to have that licensed version to be able to do a lot of this. I know there are free versions out there, and if you are good at it, they are more difficult or less intuitive, I think, than some of the paid for tools. So the additional requirements: text is not an image, like I say, the scanned in object, permissions are set correctly. That's something I found recently when I was trying to show people how to make a PDF accessible. And if you download a PDF on the internet, sometimes it will seem like it's editable, but there's a Windows security feature that stops you being able to edit all the metadata. So that caused me to fall over, and it's a weird one. When you look into the file properties, you'll have a warning telling you that it's been downloaded off the internet, and you have to make sure that you unblock it or unlock it to be able to do it properly. But then there's also permissions within the file itself. If you don't let people edit your PDF, they can't use it in a way that suits them. The file has appropriate metadata. Title's always important because that can often be what you see as the property for the PDF. Often the tab is the title, not the file name. And the language is important, and the content is tagged. The biggest pitfall I've had when it comes to doing accessibility testing with PDFs is I've given a lovely, beautiful looking file with no tags at all. And when I look at the source document, it's generally something like InDesign, where you have to do a few extra steps to tag the document as it's exported into PDF, but it's very easy to not do those steps. And if you don't have any tags, someone using the keyboard might be able to interact with elements, but they won't be able to interact well. And the reading order and a screen reader user is going to find it extremely difficult to understand what the PDF is about, because there'll be nothing. It's like when you see a large image with no with a decorative alt tag, sort of the empty alt text. That is what it was like to see the PDFs, because there's no tags, there's nothing there. So completely excluding a whole group of people. Now, to make a PDF accessible, you need to make sure that the text is searchable, as in you've done the object character recognition. You use navigational aids, the headings to split it up properly, using metadata, making sure it's tagged, a logical reading order. I have noticed sometimes when I'm creating PDFs, if I put in 4 icons into my source Word document at the same time, that does not guarantee the order that it comes out in. And it's a very interesting thing when you look at the reading order, how it can jump around. And you'll see this in a moment when I show you the PDF that I created. So that's something that's always important to check. The reading order and the tag order match up. Interactive form fields need to be interactable. I know that there's a lot of forms that are provided these days that are read-only, expected to be printed off. How do you expect someone who cannot see to print off something to fill it out by pen? A very simple step you can do is to make it into an editable form with the PDF editor, so that someone can fill it out without needing a third person to do sometimes sensitive data into that PDF. Adding alternative text for non-text elements, that's always important in any format, and appropriately formatted tables. Some of these are very similar to HTML checks. It's just slightly different fixes when it comes to the PDF. And some accessibility checkers. We're going to be looking at the first and the last, but there's also Common Look PDF Validator, but you do need Adobe to use it. And there's Pave. They're online tools. Some fixes, I haven't used them myself, but these are tools that I know are available. And as we always say, you still need the old human tool to be checking things as you go. I like to call myself a tool sometimes, but I get told off by my American friends that it's not very PC. So we'll move on. So PDFUA, so Universal Accessibility, is based on web content, Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. And it is an international organization for standardization standard, an ISO standard, which means it's recognized as a way documents should be structured to be accessible. It's what some companies will ask for when it comes to you supplying them a PDF. WCAG 2.1 is easier to meet in documents, and that's partly because it is more about web content than it is about a fixed document like a PDF. So although you can make it to meet WCAG 2.1, half the checkpoints might not be relevant. So that's why it's good to do both, I think, personally. Meeting PDFUA should cover most WCAG failures. There will be the odd exception, especially with the WCAG 2.1, but things like reflow, I think, was thought of in PDFUA before it became a 2.1 check. And like I say, both should be used for the best user experience, because if you meet both guidelines, hopefully you're making your PDFs as inclusive as possible. So for the Adobe Accessibility Checker, we have a few lightweight checks. You might notice my no tags. I've not been made bitter at all, honest. But run the PDF file through the checker to look for image-only file, no tags, and permissions affecting accessibility. there are other checks done within the check, and we'll have a look in a moment, but these are the ones that might mean that you can do this quick check and then you have to throw it back to start again from the source document before you continue any further. Like I was saying with the InDesign PDF form export where there's no tags, there's no point you trying to fix it in Adobe if there are no tags. You might as well send it back to the source document, fix the tags there, export it properly. And the permissions, again, you can't fix a PDF if the permissions don't let you. I know. Then you need to check things like color combinations and the order. Those are two manual checks always flagged in the checker. And things that some people might not think about doing is the reflow to make sure that the PDF does reflow. You can either do the zoom reflow option or the save other text so that you can see whether the order is linear or jumping around. And also tabbing through the file to check that links and fields have been done interactively. So now I am going to stop this presentation, and this is when I go, yes. And now I am going to put up my PDF. So here we have my starting PDF. And this is an export from Word. And as you can see, I've been very literal in my design here. So a visual heading not defined. It's got, sorry, it's got bold and an image missing alt text. Then a list that's not defined correctly, a list that is defined, and sub-item, sub-item 2, old item. Then we have a table that hasn't got a summary or caption with no headers. And these are the icons. I inserted these 4 icons at the same time. And you'll be interested to see the order that they come out in. And here is a link, which you can see by me hovering over the link text, but it's not shown visually because I've made it black with no underline. Isn't it amazing how inaccessible I can make it? So then I will open up the accessibility checker and accessibility check. Now, normally when it comes to tables, the tables must have a summary is unchecked because that's a nice to have, not need to have. But we're going to put that in there just to check it at the same time. And we're going to start checking. And we'll notice, so title, that's failed. As you can see here, we've got starting PDF.pdf here, which shows there is no title. But sometimes that might be down to the view for the header is not set to be the title, and it will be the page, the file format instead. And then we have, it says it's one issue, but if we expand this, the images, we have all these images without an alt tag, but hang on a minute, that one's not been highlighted at all. Did I deliberately delete a tag to show what happens when there's something that's not tagged? I think I did. Tables, because there's no table header, this is not defined as a table properly. If we go to the tags, oh, we do have the table there. But it's interesting, it didn't mention the table header side. You would have thought without the table header, it would have said there's no THs for these columns. I'm not sure why that's not showing, because it's saying it's passed. However, we know that's wrong. So one of the first things I tend to do in this sort of situation is go to the error, right click and click fix. And you get this pop-up coming in, and I might say Adobe checked PDF, and then I will do that. Now it's not updated there. That's because I haven't made it. By default, it will show the file name rather than the title, but I also think I have to save it for it to do that. And I don't really want to save it. So I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save it starting PDF 2. This is something else. I always recommend when you're doing PDF remediation, create a new version before you save it. And now you see the title is shown in the tab. And I can go through and fix these issues by right-clicking and put in alternate text. And then I can go to the next one. That's an ant. Acorn. I feel like I'm my eldest child being tested. I don't know. I'm going to say blob, but I think it's Antarctica. And then save and close. And now the images are passing. And it's interesting that this is not. So if we go to the table side of it, and then we go to the table or the edit table summary. So there wasn't, we were checking for the table summary. You can see by me right clicking and table summary that it's blank. So that should be allowing that to happen like that. There are other things I always like to do, like here, I always like to look at these. This is the order pane. And as you can see, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got all these jumping around. The icons are after the image that is after the link showing. Oh no, there's a. So yes, the text goes first, then the images go then. That doesn't really make sense to me. And I could fix things like the heading structure and the list and so on. But in this case, what I would do is go back to my source document, Word document, change it, and then export it again. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to open a PDF that is one that I've already, here's one I did earlier, where I have fixed it in the Word document. So the heading text was set as a H1, the list is properly defined, I've added a caption to the table, and I'm just going to quickly run the accessibility checker on this again. Start checking. And again, you always get these two issues, the color contrast and the logical reading order. So if I have a look at this, you'll see what I've done is if I go back to this one, how you can move it around is if I get number 8, the image, I can move that up, just drag and drop. And then you have to do the same with the tag order to make sure that this is in the, so the tag order was correct, but the order pane wasn't. And here I've already done that. I've sorted it. I've added a data table summary and I've defined the headers, which again, I did in Word. So that is my basic checks with Adobe. And now I'm like on the wrong thing, so I shouldn't have stopped the presentation. So I'll just quickly jump ahead. And now we'll come to the Pack 3 checks. I might have rushed through a bit with the PDF checks because we do have quite a lot to get through, I'm afraid. So Pack 3, it's free. It is made by a German company. So you do see bits of German in it, but there is an English version and that's fine. And you can download it for free on the PC from Accessible, and it tests for PDFUA. The good news is the next version of Pack 2021 is going to include WCAG checks as well as PDFUA checks. You'll be able to split up what is specific to WCAG versus what's a PDFUA check. So it's going to be a bit more inclusive on the findings. So next, we're going to demo, and this time I'm not going to hide the presentation. I'm just going to do it over the top. So what I'll do is I will load up Pack 3. Wait for it to load. I should have had. So here, what I'm going to do is load in my starting PDF. And as you can see, I have a few more red crosses. So if I go to the results in detail, you'll see here we have things like content. Oh, remember the apple? Yes, it's highlighting the fact it's not been tagged. So to pass this, I have to tag the object. Again, in this one, I went back into the Word document and exported it again after doing the fixes, because I did deliberately delete that so that we had that to be referenced. There are things in here that are warnings, like sect as a structure element. By default, I normally rename these to document, but because it's a warning, it's not a strict failure. But I always like to get it green for all the ticks. And I do believe that it's important when there's a warning, it's there for a reason. It's normally because I think Microsoft exports pages into the sect tag rather than a document tag, and it's easy to change. And then there's also the invalid use of the P structure. And that was because the table that was exported that didn't get flagged in Adobe has this P structure element. So if I go through to the this PDF here, and I go through these tag elements and find so I've got these. So if I delete these P tags, normally you would artifact them. So I'm just doing this quickly because we want to have those. The first one is basically the whole row in a P tag. So if I delete that again, and then the row delete tag, if I run the accessibility checker again, now I'm getting table issues with the headers failing. So that was the reason why the table didn't fail when I expected it to, because it'd been wrapped in a paragraph. So it wasn't identified correctly to the checker as a table. So if I go back to my and minimize that. So then we have alternative descriptions. Again, the figure structure element was, there was text missing. There was alternative description for annotations, which is the link that didn't have anything apart from just link. There's also the usual ones of PDFUA identifier and document settings of setting the display document title and the window title. Because there's no title, it won't display it in this one. But if I go through and do the one that I saved where I've added a title, you'll find in the results in detail, so it keeps jumping to my other monitor, that the title is now shown there. The reason that failed before was because it wasn't set, so it wouldn't display in the document in the tab. So the most important part of this, of making it work, would be is if I file save as and number 3. One thing I find very useful is the print production. And this will do a lot of the PDFUA checks for you and fix it for you. If you open up the print production tool and then go to pre-flight, you'll see that there's PDF standards, and you'll highlights here the fix problems in there. You can analyze and fix, and then it recommends that you save it in a new format, because always do a new version every time you're making changes, because it's easier to reverse them if you can go back to an older version. And then if I close that and open up here and open this, the metadata is now all fixed. The only thing that isn't fixed is the content issues with the tagged artifacts, as in that's not been tagged. It's filled in the annotations, the figure, and so on. It's fixed a lot for me without me having to do too much. Obviously, you do then have to manually check things like the order and so on, but that pre-flight check is it does save a lot of time and effort. There are ways to do the PDFUA identifier and so on manually, but I always recommend when starting out to use the pre-flight updates. So now I'm going to do a quick check. I have a pack 3 PDF2. So when I go in here, as you can see, I have them all marked as green. So those are all working. So I'm going to open up that file in Adobe, which is the pack 3.2. And we'll look at the things like the reading order, because again, I fixed the order of items. And going to do the accessibility check. Sorry, I've moved on to the next slide, haven't I? Which is compare results. So we've got the PDFUA being checked in Adobe, and start checking. The only issues that are highlighted are the manual checks that it can't check itself. So I've done things in here like the link is now showing it's blue and underlined, table headers, got a caption, the list is defined, got alt text, got the heading set, and so on. Now, if I go back to the pack 3 and I have the Adobe one I fixed, oh, that hasn't, that's not as many green ticks. So when I go through it, there's font embedding. That's interesting because that's, I believe, just a blank space. There's tagged content because, again, there was items that were not tagged that are not being shown. Then we've got the structure elements, annotations, figures, got nesting of link, annotations inside. So although I fixed it to be all green on the accessibility checker, and I'm going to check this again with the one I was just working on before, but when I checked this with the accessibility checker, there were only those 2 issues that were found. So this highlights how it's important, I believe, to use pack 3. And now I'm not a salesman for pack 3, to check your PDFs to make sure that it meets their criteria, then using Adobe to fix the issues it highlights. If you're ever unsure about where to look for results, there is tagged PDF, which is a great resource for identifying the issues. So when you come across a result that isn't clear to you how to fix it, I recommend searching for it in here. You can see I've done a few here before with bad typing. And it will help you work out how to fix it. So if I go PDFUA identified, this is often a very common issue with the metadata. Go to the error that was highlighted and it will tell you how to fix it. Again, tools, production, pre-flight. There's also videos on how to fix it and how to change it. So that, again, is a helpful resource for when you're not 100% sure. And I have been pretty much rushing through how to make PDFs accessible. So far, I might be rushing a bit too much, but then it leaves me plenty of time for lots of questions. So to summarize, I always think when it comes to PDFs, they are very useful, but can the information be presented in HTML before using a PDF? I always say that because it is easier and better for more users if you have, say, an HTML form compared to a PDF form. Sometimes the downloadable side of it is good for some people, but having an alternative of HTML is a good way to make sure that everyone's got a solution that suits them. Ensure accessibility is implemented in the source document before converting it to PDF. So if I open up Word and show you my source document, which of course I open it up. So if I open up my Word template, so here it is, fixing things in here, like defining this as heading 1, update to heading 1, right click, edit alt text, so, and so on, and making sure that when I go to the review check accessibility, that I have nothing missed out. Then I know if it's all passing on the accessibility checker, then I should have it passing within the, oh, yes, I need to just select the first row, don't I? So if I have it passing in a Word document accessibility checker, then I know that I will have it passing more in the Adobe. I say the more because when it translates across, there's never anything that's going to be 100% working as intended. So we have the header row. Oh, yeah, I should have just done that. Sorry. But yes, fixing it in here makes life a lot easier. So should we just mark that as decorative? Then it will make making the PDF accessible work better. And then things that you know are wrong. So the link format here, I would change it to underline and change the color to blue. So it's now shown visibly as well, and defining this as a list. That was easier to fix there than it would have been to fix it in Adobe. But then when I get to there, I'll notice these 4 images will still not be in the order that I think I put them in. So you fix most of it, but not all of it. And also, oh yes, there's also the info. Let's just edit the title of. You don't have to have the title of the Word document to populate the PDF. You can amend it as needed. So yes, and then what I do here to make this, I save it as an Adobe PDF. And then how many? Oh, I've only got the one, I think, so I shall save that. And then it will open up in Adobe and I can just do the accessibility check. This is something that's always going to fail when it's done. The title will fail because although it's there, there's something that doesn't link it in the export part. And so if you just click fix, it will now be using the title that was provided by the Word document. But that one is a known issue when it comes to exporting Word documents into PDFs. So yes, making sure it's implemented in the source document before converting to PDF makes your life a lot easier. Use accessibility checkers, but remember to do necessary manual checks of such as content order and use of color. Those are always the 2 that are highlighted as requiring a manual check because it's something they cannot programmatically check. And use help and or the tag2pdf.com to fix issues. So if I go here, for any of these, I can ask it to explain the rule, and then it will show me the help of why it's important, how to check it, and what to do, what is expected. So Adobe do have quite a comprehensive help when it comes to fixing the items. And this is when I go, Andrew, fill me in with some questions. Yes.
Helen, thank you so much. This was great. I love that it's hands-on and you're showing us how you go through and check. Really appreciate you going through this. We have some really great questions. So if you don't mind, you can go ahead and stop sharing. And then I'm going to just go through some of the questions here for you.
Okay.
one of them, this is what's great about our community, right, is there was a question asked and somebody answered it. So Catherine Shaw asked, is there a version of Pack 3 for Mac? And Doug Heyman said, their page says there is no Mac version. Unfortunately, Pack is only available for PCs. Even if
Yes.
we'd like to offer a Mac version, that has unfortunately not yet been financed. So there you go. Another question that, again, I'm going to try and get through as many questions as we can here, and it's always good to get Helen's expertise. Jazzy Pants 404, which I really like that
Yeah, me
title.
too.
You cannot find them when it's a 404. What do you do about header titles in a document, like a business letter, where there might not be a good H1? If there's no subject, would I just tag the addressee name as an H1? Can I skip an H1? What do you think?
You can have more than one H1. Normatively, the order of headings and the use of headings is a best practice, but the use of headings is you need to have a normative. So if you had a document with just H2s, technically that passes. But if you're like me and you want that one H1 to give the purpose of the document, sometimes when it comes to letters, you might have the synopsis as in RE and the subject of the letter, which I think is always a good H1 because it's giving the purpose of what the document's about. So yes, I gave you the technical and the what I would do answer. Just don't start thinking what would Helen do, because I'm not normative.
Can I make a t-shirt? I'm not normative. That's great. I love it. Another question, Steve Woodson had a question. Is there a certain threshold where you'd recommend remediating within the PDF, like what you were showing, versus going back to that source document, like the Word document?
Yes. Some things like the structure tags, if the source document hasn't exported the tags, the pain you'd have in trying to add those back in Adobe is, it would take you weeks compared to a couple of hours, maybe, depending on the size of the document, obviously. Those ones always go to the source document when it's a major item. Some things like the alt tags and so on, they can be either or. I always think it's easier to fix it in the source document because the source document might be reused. And if you fixed it there so it's accessible as best you can, future use should stop those issues repeating. But that's a personal preference. I think when it comes down to it, there are things that you have to fix in Adobe because, like with that title where, although I've got the title, it's exported, it's not properly linked, you still have to do that one-click fix. And there are other items like the reading order. If I go, oh, I'm not showing anymore, but if I went to the reading order part of my accessible Word document, the reading order still was jumping around as I first showed. So that is something I would fix within the PDF itself, because it's something you can't always fix that well in the source document. You can in some cases, but because I do believe in Word documents and others, sometimes it's the order in which you put things in versus having a reading order. Like PowerPoint, you've got a reading order that you can change. I think you can with Word, but I'm not going to quote myself in case I'm not 100% right. But yes, in those sort of cases, it's easier for me to drag things around within the order pane than it is to try and fix it in the source document and then again across, unless it's one of those source documents you're likely to reuse.
Thanks. This leads great into, I think, the next question asked was, how would you recommend taking on large numbers of PDFs in an organization to help it not be so overwhelming? So what you just said is great, but like organizations that are pumping out a lot of PDFs, like, would you recommend some bulk fixes or things that we can set up Is there a process?
Yes. If possible, have templates that have reduced the amount of issues that will get exported. Make sure that you've got a working practice in-house, because if you're given 1,000 PDFs to remediate because no one knows what they're doing, you're in a whole heap of pain. So create an accessible template with instructions of how to do it and how to make it the basics accessible, like with our showing the pre-flight option. There will always be tweaks needed, but if you've had everything else done and you just have to maybe change the reading order because the images are inserted after all the text, that is an easier task than trying to do all those items like the title and all the rest of it, and so on. And always make sure that the title is meaningful to the PDF. I was adding numbers to mine because I was versioning it, but I do think you should always make sure that the name used should be clear what the purpose of that PDF is, and not always just 1, 2, 3, 4.
Or your account number. Right.
Yeah, my count number of how many mistakes I've made or how many potential mistakes I've made with the edits. But at the end, you can quickly, do the numbering while you're working through it and then go back and rename it into a meaningful file name and title. But yes, for a large organization, sometimes the task is, especially if you've got lots of legacy PDFs, it's extremely difficult. And sometimes I would say to look at the most commonly used PDFs and start with those, and then work your way through them, break it down into smaller chunks, and look at the process of working with PDFs so that you can address it to prevent it becoming a future issue.
That's excellent. A little bit just because I have you and I am the host. Have you worked with like a PDF library or like a PHP library? I know we've used projects FPDF that you're able to like automate them by just taking information. Have you worked with that, or you just work on the output PDF?
Yeah, I'm not very techy, I'm afraid. I'm more
Okay.
the output PDF.
Yeah.
But tell me more.
No, I think you answered the question is just by the process is whatever we decide to output as a PDF, we should just test it and iterate on that before we mass produce them. And the good news about that project is we convinced them to go to HTML, which I loved your recommendation. It's a lot easier to consume that way and available because which leads to another question. What happens when fonts and images overlap? We've all seen that in a PDF. How do you address that?
Yes, and the worst bit is I keep getting emails at the moment from someone who sends me PDFs and it overlaps the footer of their email and my mobile, and I'm like, well, I have to spread this. In the PDF itself, if you have overlapping words and characters, that can be down to the resolution that you're looking at it in.
Okay.
I would look at the reflow view of the PDF and check that the order is making sense. And make sure that they allow reflow. Some PDFs don't allow the reflow option because it's being set as this is always a size. And then if someone has a different font size, it throws out. And the other instance it happens is when it's a scanned image. Sometimes when there's a little crease in one of the pages, that's always fun as well. Again, go back to the source document. If it is just a scanned image, you need to have maybe another tool that will do object character recognition for you to reduce the fact it is just a plain image. I don't think I properly answered that because I'm not sure. I guess don't look at it on your mobile might be one answer, but that's not always a good answer.
Good. You actually touched on something which was another question. Would you say library digitized versions should be avoided, even in, I believe you called OCR, object character recognition? So that was from Martin Baxter. Like, do you have any?
Is that where you have lots of old documents, you've scanned them in and then saved them as PDFs?
That's my best guess because it says library digitized version.
Yeah, and I have seen and audited some of those before. In those cases, it is okay if there is a text alternative, whether you have a transcript of what is seen on the page in a text-only version. It's a lot of work. At the same time, I also appreciate it's good to maybe save old texts if there may be fragile, not able to be available to a lot of people. But just remember that unless there is a text-only alternative or transcript, that they're not going to be accessible to everyone.
Great. Let's go back to reading order. Elizabeth Thomas asked, what technologies use the order in the Z order pane to determine reading order? I thought most technologies use the order in the tag tree and a small percentage of tech use the content pane.
Yes, the content pane is more often used by reflow. So if that's not linear, when you do the text zoom reflow where it goes one item after the other, it will go in the order of the order panel. I also heard that some screen readers do use the order panel. I think it used to be the inbuilt reader used to, but I think that's a tag order now. I also know that Adobe are looking to have a third order that is going to override those two and replace them. I believe, I don't know, it's a work in progress, but yes, the reading order or the order pane is important for the text reflow.
Okay. Two more questions, probably we have time. One of them is, I can feel the pain in this question. It's from Doug Heyman. When, if ever, will Adobe provide multiple levels of undo like modern software companies instead of making us make so many save versions? What are your thoughts, Helen?
I've got the same pain point. I remember when I was remediating a 300-page PDF and I'd got to the end of editing the tag order, adding the headings in manually and all the rest. And then I didn't make a backup version and I started on the reading order.
Did you cry? I would have cried.
More expletives than it was crying, but yes, it was. And of course, you can undo within that session, but you don't always realize in that session that what you've done is wrong. So a version history would be lovely rather than the multiple file versions, as you saw I did.
Yes.
That experience burnt that into my soul. So to answer the question, don't know, but really with you there for hoping it gets done.
Wouldn't it be great if an Adobe person was joining today? They saw all the PDF tweets and that'd be great. Another question from Martin Baxter. Often the only version available is an inherited PDF. The original is lost or no longer exist. What would you recommend in this situation?
Apart from crying.
Or expletives, as you said.
Yes, that's my English way. You can get software that can do better editing than the Adobe Checker can, because Adobe DC, there are limitations like the character recognition. I can't think of the name of that software at the top of my head because I haven't used it. I've just heard about it. It would cost a lot of time to be able to do that because you'd have to you'd map each character individually to what it is in the alphabet. That manual mapping takes a lot of time, and also it's a paid for license. You've got that as well. If it's something that you're not familiar with, you might want to go to a PDF remediation company. All I can say for that, from the millions of LinkedIn messages I get, always make sure that their marketing email looks at what you do for a job and doesn't ask to remediate your PDFs in broken English and think that you'd want to go with them.
I was going to ask companies are you comfortable saying what companies you've used, or it's okay if not?
That's why I've learned to do it myself. No, there are a few companies out there that are very good. I don't know their names, but they are expensive because it is
Yeah.
one of those to do it well and to do it in the way that you'd like. It's a rare thing to find. So I'm sure people that will know some will tweet them up now.
Yep, that sounds great. All right, well, I know we didn't get through all the questions, but this is a great chance for us to put them out there. We're definitely pass them along to you, Helen. And just really thanks for your time, your expertise. That's great. So I'm just going to wrap up here. The links will be available later when the YouTube video is posted online. Remember to join us next month to talk. We have a lot of really exciting speakers in the queue. And more great hosts. The A11yTalks team has added people, and I'm just really excited to be a part of this team. Just a reminder, we're always recruiting new speakers. So if you are excited about today and have something to say, we make a conscious effort to include marginalized groups in our tech and speaker lineup. Please let us know if you have ideas and reach out to any of us. We have our website. We're on the YouTubes. We are on the Twitters. A11yTalks, that's A11yTalks. And that's it. So until next time,